What's up guys, welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called, Hit My Car and Try to Get Away? I'll track you down and make you pay. Double. So I never knew about this community until now, so I'm happy to share my story. This happened a few years ago. So my fiance at the time, now wife, and I were driving around looking for dresses for her bridesmaids to wear for the wedding. We had been going from place to place looking for something she liked, but no luck. We had just finished leaving David's bridal and we were leaving the plaza. It had been raining a lot, so the roads were slick. As I reached the intersection of where the plaza met the road to turn out, another car came turning in. Unfortunately, he didn't brake soon enough and skidded into the front end of the driver's side. Thankfully, everyone was okay. We got out of our cars and looked at the damage. His car, of course, was completely unharmed and mine had a minor dent. He looked about 45-ish and had his son in the car with him. We exchanged names and phone numbers and he let me know he was on the way to work and I told him we were just wedding shopping. I was 22 at the time and very naive as to what to do in case of an accident. He told me that we both seemed pretty busy and that we should just handle it ourselves since we were both busy. We didn't call the police, my mistake, and he told me to get the damage looked at to see what it would cost. I took the car in 2 days later and they quoted me $1,100 for the bumper to be replaced. I texted him and he told me he will be getting scholarships in 2 months when he goes back to school and he would be able to pay me in cash then. I, again naively, told him that should be fine. A week later, I followed up with him about another estimate I got which was lower than the original, $900, but I got no response. I texted him again and again for the next few days and nothing. At this point, I realized he had bailed. I came up with a plan to find him. All I had was his name, a now useless phone number, and a general area of where he worked. I searched for him on Facebook and was pretty sure I found him. I searched under his family members and saw what looked to be like his son. My soon-to-be sister-in-law was 16 and looked about the same age as the son. I decided to go full-on sleuth and go undercover. I used her Facebook and changed her last name to match theirs. I messaged the son and told him that I thought we might be cousins. I asked some questions about his dad, like name and his job, and told him that my mom said I have an uncle down there by that name and worked at this guitar shop. He answered yes, that was his dad's name and told me the name of the place where his dad worked. I was so relieved I was making progress. The next day, I drove back up near the accident and found where the man worked. I found his car and took pictures of his license plate. I then took all the info I had and went to the courthouse. I filled out paperwork and handed it to the clerk. The clerk told me they could either mail the form to his work address, or if I paid $25, I could have an officer hand deliver it. Of course, I paid the $25 just to embarrass him at his place of work. A few weeks later, we were summoned to the court to see if we could work things out before going to an actual hearing. He showed up and we sat down with a mediator. She explained everything to all of us. I told him I didn't want to do this, but he stopped responding. He replied that his phone was stolen, so he had to get a new one. In my mind, a phone being stolen doesn't equal changing your phone number. I knew he was lying. The moderator asked him to step outside. She talked to us and told us not to trust him because his story didn't make any sense. The mediator invited him back inside and we read over the terms I listed in the court documents. He was to pay $2,400. I charged him the original replacement cost, gas from driving back and forth, my time for doing all this work, and extra just for being a butthole. He said he would pay, but didn't like that I went to his job and took pictures of his car. I replied, I didn't like that he hit my car. A few months later, he paid the full amount in cash and had to pay for our court costs as well. I sold the damaged car and took the cash he gave me to buy another car fully in cash. All in all, I benefited from it, but next time I'll just call the cops and save myself the headache. Honestly, that sounds like something I would do because I'm extremely naive. Cause, I mean, what's the harm in trusting people? Okay, that's a bad question. This story's called Landlord Wants to Sue Us for Hurricane Damages. I lived briefly in Florida about a decade ago, which is where I met my partner. It wasn't long after we met that we moved in together due to my not-so-great living situation, renting a room from a friend who was so addicted to opioids she could barely function, and her enabler husband. We found a nice little 2-bedroom house that was owned by an elderly couple that lived just a few blocks away. Everything was okay. We did find cockroaches after we moved in, which was quite shocking as I am extremely clean and had never had roaches before, and when we told the landlords, they told us they were not roaches, but palmetto bugs. FYI, they are the same thing, and refused to have an exterminator come in. Bad sign number 1. Then a hurricane blew in. This was Florida after all. It was only a Category 1 or Cat 2, I don't really remember, but there was substantial damage to the roof and a lot of water had gotten in. Being northerners, we had no real idea how to prepare properly, and the landlords just told us to lower the hurricane shutters. So that is all we did. It wasn't long after we had mold growing on our walls, especially in the laundry room. Reported it to the landlords, and they told us just to wash it down with bleach water. So we did. And it came right back, so it was a constant cleaning process. When we complained, we were told that was what life in Florida was like. They also came and took a look at the roof from the yard and told us, "You two are strapping young men, you can go up there and fix it. Just let us know when you're done." Yeah, no. Then another hurricane blew through. Again, only a Category 1 or 2, but this time we had the windows broken during the storm. And since our roof was still not repaired or even tarped from the last storm, our carpets and furniture were soaked. Here comes the black mold again. But this time, not only on our walls, but on our carpets and furniture too. I spent the days outside with our dog and we were sleeping in my partner's office. Our landlords again told us just to clean it up with bleach water and that the damage was our fault since we didn't prepare well and hadn't fixed the roof ourselves. So we called the city and had an inspector come by. He walked in and balked at what he found. Black mold all over the carpets and walls. The roach population had a little boom and he could tell, while looking at the roof that was in need of repair prior to the storm. And it still hadn't been tarped. The best part is, when I was standing at our open door with the inspector just inside, the old man came walking up, talking about how we better have repaired the roof and how they were going to charge us for all repairs and carpet replacements and mold removal, yada yada yada. Cue the city worker who came around the corner and asked if he was the owner. He said yes, and the inspector told him he was condemning the house because it was not habitable, and that it was not our responsibility as tenants to make or pay for the repairs. He also recommended that we should be released from the lease. Never seen an old man wobble away so fast. Later that night, his wife called, raising high holy hell about how she was suing us for damages, how we were not getting any money back, blah 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 blah. She also said she had to remove the condemned danger signage that was placed on the door because it was embarrassing, people knew it was their property. But she made a mistake. She wrote us strongly worded letters about how we were taking advantage of the elderly, how all the damages were our fault since we didn't do any repairs, how she would not release us from the lease, and how many lawsuits she was going to hit us with. After contacting the inspector who saw our house, who took another trip to the house to replace the signage, we turned all of this in. He laughed and sighed and said he knew exactly how to handle it since he saw this all the time after hurricanes, and if they actually sued, he would testify in our favor since what they were doing was highly illegal. He then told us he was going to pay them a little visit and make sure the letters got into the hands of the right people, as well as how he had to replace the signs. Another thing she admitted in the letters. About a week later, we got a really pleasant call from the landlady, saying we were such wonderful tenants and how she was refunding our security deposit and how she was graciously going to let us out of the lease and not pursue any charges or the rent for the last few months, which we had refused to pay since we could not live there. And if we needed help finding a new place, to let her know and she would refer us to some of her friends who own property too. Nope. We did learn, because we were watching the situation, that the house had to be gutted and completely remodeled. We actually parked up the road with some takeouts and watched a crew haul out sheetrock and carpet. They could have saved themselves thousands if they had just called a roofer and someone to clean the mold instead of making us call the city and have the house condemned and then do whatever they did to make them change their minds on everything else. Still, I wish I could have been there when they confronted my inspectors the second time. The first was glorious. Alright, bad landlords are the absolute worst. I mean, bad tenants are too. I'm not sure which is worse, but they're both pretty bad. This story's called Revenge on the Low-Life Landlord Who First Deprived Us of Heat and Later Kept Our Security Deposit. I responded to another post and had a mini blow-up, with many encouraging me to post it here. So here it is. I was a kid back in the 80s, 2 years out of college, when I moved into an apartment by the shore in New Jersey. When the cold weather arrived, there was always a few days when the apartment was cold. We would tell the super and then the heat would start arriving. One year, the heat started decreasing in February, and inside the apartment was like in the 50s and we had to start wearing coats. We told the super about it and nothing happened this time. We wrote the landlord about it and still nothing. So we checked with an attorney and learned about warranty of habitability and withholding of rents. So yet another certified letter to the landlord, and we start withholding rents. He files with the motion to evict us, and we answer with the Marini defense, depositing the withheld monies with the court. The judge finds us in our favor for all the money withheld. We continue to live there because there just aren't many other options as we save for a home. Flash forward to living there for 6 years. On the last lease, because we are about to buy a home, we write in a clause that we can break the lease with 45 days notice in writing, similar to his 45-day clause. They didn't notice it because it's slightly obscured on the top left of page 2, so they sign off on it and return it to me. So in the middle of the lease, we give the 45-day written notice, make the rent payments, and leave. They don't return our deposit, so we sue for it, demanding double. They sue us for the remainder of the 6 months' rent and refuse to return our security deposit. This is no longer small claims courts, but we proceed without an attorney anyway. They are expensive. We arrive at the courthouse and court forces a round of arbitration. The arbitrator says we will lose in front of the judge and to pay the rent remainderments. We refuse and wait for the judge. While waiting, the landlord's attorney drops by and asks why we didn't take the arbitrator's advice. So we tell him about the clause we wrote in, and he states he saw it too, and that since it was crossed out, it's not part of the deal. We show him our copy of the lease where it's not crossed out, and his face goes white as a sheet. He makes a call to the landlord, who then offers to properly break the lease with no penalty and return our security deposit in full. We refuse, and we show him the certified letter stating that we would have accepted that deal up until yesterday, but that if you force us to come down to court, we want double damages for the improper withholding of the security deposit. He tries again to reach out to the landlord, but no luck this time. We go to see the judge. He looks at both leases and calls their attorney to the bench. The judge takes our lease and thrusts it toward the attorney and says, "This is a lease in force." The attorney starts walking around the courtroom like a chick with its head cut off, while I try to laugh as quietly as possible. The judge fines for us for double damages. We receive nothing for a week, and I go back to the courthouse where the clerk says they should pay that judgment immediately and tells about the chattel execution and gives us that form. Couple of weeks pass and a check appears from the landlord. Another month passes and we get a call from the court. They have our money. I told them the landlord had sent a check a while back, so it is all good. She tells us that we should have informed the court that we got the money to stop the chattel execution from occurring. The court sent the sheriff to their offices and confiscated office equipment and sold it at an auction to satisfy the judgment. They said don't worry, they will just return the money to the landlord. That is the revenge. Getting the money and having them experience the abrupt seizing of their assets at their place of business, having it sold at auction, and then having the money returned to them. Major pro-justice. At least this guy was honest. I remember one time I was trying to sell something on eBay, but right before I was about to ship it out after it had been sold, it broke. So I refunded the buyer their money through PayPal, and then they went ahead and made a claim on eBay, and then they took the money from my bank account. So he got double the money, and then I called PayPal, and they're like, "Oh, the information you gave is incorrect," so I had it was just a process. It was so annoying. Anyways, good on this dude for being honest, and landlord, you're a jerk. This story's called Steal Money from People's Gym Bags, Enjoy Getting Expelled and Sent to Jail. Many years ago, when I was in high school, someone in my gym class was stealing out of people's bags and lockers, taking money, headphones, jewelry, etc. I personally had $20 taken out of my locker, and one of my buddies had a $200 pair of headphones stolen. After that, I decided, screw this guy is going down. Nobody knew who was doing the stealing, and catching the person wasn't as easy as setting up a camera because video recording was not allowed in the locker room. So I hatched a brilliant plan. I had this marker that had a UV light on the back that wrote invisible writing, then when you shined the light on the writing, it glowed. My plan was to grab a friend and have him put a big X written on both sides of a $10 bill with the marker, then leave it in his bag or locker. So right before class ends one day, I pull aside one of my friends and our coach and gave him the bill and told them the plan. The next day, we followed through with the plan, and at the end of the class, he checked his bag and the bill was still there. The next day, same thing. Finally, the following day, he checks his bag at the end of class, and sure enough, it was gone. We immediately go and tell the coach, and the coach calls the school's police officer. The coach then proceeds to tell all of our classmates to line up with their belongings and not go anywhere. The cop arrives with several of the deans, and they proceed to go one by one searching everyone's bags and pockets inside out. Sure enough, they get to this one guy, and the cop says, "Oh, what do we have here?" Turns out, not only did this kid steal the bill, he had a bag of weed in his pockets too. Long story short, dude gets expelled, and apparently this dude was already on probation and ended up going to a juvenile detention center as well. Double whammy. Never had any problems with stealing after that. Man, it's always sad seeing kids that young getting into that much trouble. I am 100% glad he got caught, but I really hope he gets better, criminally. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.